So today's episode was about inspired action, and we got to talk about a little bit about our stories and what inspired action means to us. And also we got to talk a little bit about how we met.
Yes, and how it was very aligned and divine, truly. Kind of talked about what inspired action is and maybe how to listen to those little pings that come and how you can start to take more inspired action.
Yeah, and we also talked about how inspired action it doesn't require belief, and it's going to help you get towards your goals and get towards expanding your mind, expanding your self-concept and building trust with yourself and the universe and really creating the life of your dreams. So we're super excited to get into this episode, and it's our first episode,
Our
so
first
we're
episode.
so excited to have you here.
So
And
cute.
you get to learn a little bit more about us as we go. And this episode is really great because it's kind of the foundation for all of the other episodes that are going to be coming out after this. You're gonna hear us go on tangent after tangent. We have to reel ourselves back in because this is really the foundation.
And we love talking about this stuff. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Aligned and Divine podcast. I'm your host, Mercedes Smith.
And I'm your host, Olivia Thomas. We created this podcast to have a safe space for you to share, connect, relate, and ultimately to grow.
The goal of this podcast is to share with you the strategy and mindset necessary to align with your highest self so you can massively uplevel your business, your relationships, your self-concept, and step into your innate divinity to raise the consciousness of the entire planet.
We want you to know that you are always aligned and divine.
I just finish up a YouTube video about inspired action. So that's kind of at the top of my mind right now. It's
I love
like
that.
inspired action and the law of inspired action.
I think this podcast is inspired action. I've been doing a lot of inspired action lately. I've been talking about how something that I've been really, really interested in and passionate about lately is this idea of going for your fucking goals and going for your dreams and letting yourself dream big and whatever. And I feel like you help inspire me to do that. So there's one thing there. And then I think that if you are dreaming big and allowing yourself to want what you want and whatever, then you will automatically be taking inspired actions. Like if you're holding this vision of what you want, then you will take inspired actions to help yourself get there.
I think so too. Plus, I think that we're both kind of like the epitome of inspired action right now, considering that we both swapped and moved across the country.
Yeah, literally.
Not only are we the epitome of inspired action, but inspired action is what led us to meeting each other
Yeah,
in general, and
exactly.
like how much the universe conspired to get us together, you know?
And starting the podcast is inspired
Is
action.
inspired action.
Yeah.
Yeah. Inspired action is taking action because you feel the urge, inclination, or desire to do something. It's based on the basic belief that we have intuitive guidance that is leading us in the right direction. Inspired action might come to you as a gut feeling, creative idea, or a simple urge to try something. So I think, especially when we talk about self-concept, and you bring up like self-concept so much, and I love that. For me, inspired action has helped me raise my self-concept
Yes.
because
I
it gives
think
me confidence.
yes, 100%. And I mean, even doing things like shadow work or dreaming bigger or just healing your inner child, I feel like that can all be aspects of inspired action also, and like that very much
Yes.
ties in with, yeah,
And
ties
they
in
all
with
come
self-concept.
together. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think in this episode would be great for us to talk about how we met. So I'm gonna start off with my story if you don't mind. My whole story of moving to Dallas was 100% inspired action, living on a prayer, prayer, a hope, a wish, a dream, going by a gut feeling, kind of having a conversation with God and being like, you want me here, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to do it? So I come from I not I come from I came from California. So I was living in California. I don't know if I've told you this story. I think I've told you portion of this
Okay.
story.
Okay. Learning something new every day.
Mhm, because
Love,
that's what
love.
we do. That's what we
Li-
do.
Literally diving deeper every day.
So about, I want to say now it's been like 3 or 4 years. I had it on my heart to go to Dallas. And I didn't really know why. It just really came out of the blue, but I kind of ignored it because I had just moved into my own place at the time. It was the first time that I lived by myself, and I was making big girl money at, one of the big tech companies in the Bay Area. And I was like, I didn't want to get rid of that freedom. And also I was not really in the best place with my family, but I was working on the relationships that really, really mattered to me. So this is a portion of my life where I was like really dedicating my life towards God. And I was like, I had been so destructive in my healing journey previous to this, in my grief journey. I had been destructive to myself more than anything. That at this point, I was literally like, okay, God, like, I don't know what you want from me, how you want me to live this life, but you keep waking me up every morning. And so if you're waking me up, it has to be for a reason. I'm just going to go by what you want from me. Cause I obviously, like, I kid you not, I had this whole conversation. I was in my living room and I like was talking to myself out loud, and I was just like, obviously you keep waking me up, obviously there's a reason for me to still be alive,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what it was. And so I was like, I'm just going to go live by your terms. And that was one of the first times that I heard Dallas come up. Mind you, I had never been to Texas before. I don't have any family out here. Actually, I
Mhm.
do now, but I didn't realize that I did. But I didn't have any immediate family out here. I had no connection to Texas at all. And I've
Yeah.
never even heard of Texas previous to this. Well, the only time I did hear of Texas previous to this was that it was one of the options that Jen and I had thought about moving to together when we had
Mm.
decided to move in together,
Yeah.
because he was in the military and he was planning on going back to the military after he was done getting his BSN. And one of the places that he had in mind was Fort Worth,
Yeah.
because it was one of the places that he could go. But that was the only time it had ever come up. So fast forward, at this point, I had been living for about 2 years, kind of just vibing, and I was like living on a prayer again, and I heard it again, and it was 2021. God had just asked me to quit my job, and I did, which was wild. That's a whole other conversation. And then I heard it again in a podcast, and it was Mind Manifest Daily. I don't know if you've ever heard of that podcast before.
Maybe.
Mm, but it was
Mm.
one of the first times, it was one of the first podcasts that I had heard when I was on my spiritual journey. And she had just stuck to me. Her name was Deandra Nicolette. And she, at this time, moved to Dallas, and she had announced that she was moving to Dallas. And I was like, that's so crazy. That was just like,
Yeah.
I heard it on my heart again. So, fast forward again, and last year in December, okay, not last year, the year before last year. So it was last year, 2022. So this is at the end of 2021 by this point.
Yeah.
So when I heard that in the podcast the first time, it was like June, July of 2021. By December of 2021, I heard it so loud, where God was like, I was meditating and I was in prayer, and I was just had this incredible experience with Jesus that really blew like my heart out of the water. It was really incredible. And I heard Dallas again. And at this point, my lease was going to be up in March. But I was living with my sister and Morgan at the time, and both of them had kids. And so I was worried about like, well, how are they going to find a place? But I had let them know, hey, like this is on my heart. I think I'm going to move, but then I made no effort towards it. I just told them, like, this is what's on my heart. I made no effort towards it though. I made no action. Neither did they. So come time around, I ended up re-signing my lease again. And I kid you not, from the day that I re-signed my lease, I was sick all of the time. I was so depressed. I felt so resentful. I couldn't even be in my home without feeling like, ugh, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was causing dissension in my relationships with my sister, even my niece and my nephew. I was like, I wasn't looking at them at these beautiful bundles of joy. I was looking at them as little, and
Yeah.
I was just like wanting to fight a 2 year old, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And me and Morgan were getting in fights all the time, and it just felt like something is wrong here. And I felt it deep in my soul. And then I had a conversation with God again. And I said, listen, if you want me to up and leave my life, and up, literally, it's not just me involved. There's other people involved that have to find their own places to live. And it's a whole thing. And like, I was like, but if you want me to do all that, I need you to do something for me. And so my little connection with God was, we have a little code word. We have a little code word. And so I had heard this on a podcast, I think somewhere. I have no idea where I got it from, but it was basically about, making a little code word with God and making a little code word with the universe that is like your go ahead on doing something. For
Yeah.
me, that was a penguin.
Okay, cute.
So I was like, I had to go. Long story short, it was a penguin, and I was like, okay, I completely forgot about it. It was at the beginning of the day. I completely forgot about it. I went, I had an event in San Francisco. I came back. And when I was going through this, you have to go through this town to go from one freeway to the other to get to my house.
Mhm.
I was going to this town, and I was like, I was pulling into Carl Jr. because I was so hungry. I hadn't eaten anything all day. I pull into Carl Jr. and I turn around and I was like, damn, it's the end of the day. And I was like, I guess I'm not gonna see the sign.
Penguin.
Then I
Yeah,
guess I have to just figure out what I'm gonna do and
yeah.
just suck it up, basically. Girl, why did I turn the corner to go around in this drive-through? And in the parking lot was this huge moving van. It was a
Mhm.
moving van, and there was a huge penguin on the moving van.
Wow, very synchronicity like.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
yeah,
So that's after that, everything happened so fast. I immediately told Morgan. And then one thing after another just fell into place that brought me to Texas. And then when I was in Texas, this, mind you, me moving was the first time I had ever even stepped foot in Texas.
yeah.
And then everything that I had moved here for, the job and the apartment that I had, both of them fell through at the same time. And I was like stuck here after I had sold everything and like didn't know what to do. And I was literally, thank God for Yvonne. It was like the first time I ever met her, and she was like, you can literally sleep on my couch if you need to.
Yeah, so nice.
And I was like, you're so nice. What the heck? And then after like 2 months, I remember I was like on the phone with one of my friend's moms, and she's like such a coach. Literally, she's a coach to everybody. I don't even play
Yeah,
sports, and she was my coach.
yeah.
And she was like, what you need to do is you need to figure out another way to get your own apartment. And she was like, you need to sublet. You need to figure something out. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think of that as an option. Like,
Yeah.
duh. And I go on the little Facebook and I add to different
Mhm,
marketplaces and I go
mhm.
to look at different groups. And I was
Yeah,
like, I don't know why I didn't think of this before.
right.
And I saw your lovely face. And there's a lot of things on there, but I saw your lovely face. And half of the reason why I even like clicked on yours was one, because you were Black. And I was like, I love Black women and I wanted to make friends with Black women.
Mhm.
And then two, when I looked at your LinkedIn, I saw you in marketing. I had to
In
make sure you
marketing?
were a real
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
And I was
Yes.
like, "Oh, okay, cool. Like this is a
Yeah,
real person."
yeah,
And it was just it felt like at every point I heard a voice that told me something. I didn't even question it, but I didn't question its validity, but I questioned how it was going to happen, but I moved anyway.
yeah.
And then one thing after another just fell into place, and then that's where we are now.
Okay. Love, love, love. I'm so excited to kind of talk about my experience with moving. And it was very similar because I also literally asked the universe, asked God to make it as easy as I make it easy for me to get to LA. That's what I said. So I said, I've had LA on my heart for probably, I mean, about 2 years, maybe a little less than that. And I knew I wanted to get to LA. At the time, was in a locked into a lease and was working a job I really didn't like, and had no idea how I was going to get to LA. I was like, okay, maybe I'll move there and just figure it out and get a bartending job or whatever. Like I'll figure it out, whatever. But then I started getting it was just not a it was a kind of a stressful idea of doing that. And I am
Mm,
more typically more someone that does like to have a plan and like have some safety in place. And so it just wasn't quite me doing that. I knew it would be fine if I did do that. But I was like, you know what? Okay. Instead of me stressing about it, I'm going to stop stressing about it and say, hey, universe, show me how easy it can be to get to LA. And then within a couple of weeks, Mercedes reaches out about the sublet for my apartment because that was something I was stressed about. I was like, okay, how am I going to get out of my lease? Like, what if I don't find someone to sublet, or what if, it drops out, whatever. So Mercedes, the angel that she is, comes out of the blue. And it was kind of like my post had been up there for a minute, and I
no,
talked
it
to a couple
had
people.
been.
Yeah,
I
I
think it
talked to
was
a
your
couple.
second time posting too.
Yeah, I had talked to a couple people and it was like, didn't really feel like the best fit and it was just not great. And then Mercedes comes out of the blue and you come over and look at the apartment in person, and you seemed like a really, really amazing person. And you had like pointed out you looked at my crystals and were like, "Oh, you're a crystal girl too." I'm like, "You're a crystal girl? Okay, bet. I know you're a good
Okay.
person. Cool."
Yeah.
So that transition was extremely smooth, and I was so grateful for that. And then, again, asking universe, show me how easy it can be. My other really, really good friend realized that her job was hiring in LA, and I had wanted to get into sales. So this position is a sales position in LA, and basically this job is an amazing opportunity, and they get made it very comfortable for me, and they give me a car and pay for my gas. Like, it just is such an amazing situation. So back to kind of circling back to how you asked God, like, ask God for a sign, ask God if this is something you should be doing, and God literally answered. It's like, yes, okay, here
Yeah.
you go. I asked God, the universe, to make it easy for me, make it possible for me, and that's what happened. So just this idea of like actually asking for what you want is so powerful. And I think it's extremely powerful.
Wait, asking for what you want. Can we talk about that for a second? Because I think that's the process before inspired action, right? And I think
Yeah.
for me, that was where I often got stuck. And that's where like the mindset really comes into play, because there were so many times where I wouldn't even ask. I wouldn't even pray about it. I wouldn't even like write it down. I would just think that it was so far out of reach or so far away from my current reality that I
Yes.
wouldn't even think to ask. And even you saying like, show me how easy it can be to move there. That wouldn't even have been a question that I would have thought to ask, because
Right.
I think it's so ingrained in us that what we want, like, we have to work hard
Has
for
to
it,
be a
or
grind. Like,
it has
yeah.
to be a grind. It's not
Yeah.
gonna come easy. And
Yeah.
so even asking the question, like, can you show me how easy this is actually?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, that
yeah,
affirmation has been really powerful for me because, yeah, I grew up kind of in this mindset of, yeah, very much survival mindset
yeah,
of like,
yeah,
okay, this shit is hard. It's hard to
yeah,
make money. It's hard to get a good job. It's hard to do things that you love. Like, it's just hard, 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 hard. But I have really started to lean into this idea of like, okay, really starting to believe that our beliefs create our reality. So it's like, okay, if I believe that things are hard, then yeah, they'll be hard. But if I start to actually let myself believe that things can be easy, then they can be easy. And I've really tried to lean into that, um and it has been working. Things I
yeah,
feel a lot more ease, and I not necessarily, it's not like I'm just coasting. This whole idea of inspired action goes along with ease, I think, really well, because inspired action can be really, really powerful, and you can be doing really, really big, hard things, but they just feel more at ease. Like, there's less resistance happening, I think, in my personal experience. So it's like, okay, show me how easy it can be to XYZ. And then it's like, oh, I feel inspired to do this. Like, it's not
mhm,
hard. I feel inspired to do it. So yeah, that I think that
mm,
also ties into it. And then I also wanted to say just real quick, I think everyone asking for what they want helps move the world in a better direction, because, for example, you moving to Dallas and you wanting a sublet, you let yourself want to that sublet. I needed someone to sublet. So that helped me, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's like
form that
you
connection.
yeah, it formed that connection. It's like you wanting what you want helped me in this scenario, but I think us wanting what we want and going for what we want helps the world, and helps the
Mm.
world in general kind of move in the right direction. So I just wanted to touch on that too.
It's like we're all connected. It's
We're
like
all
all
connected.
connected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think for me too, a lot of times inspired action can be just disruptive action. So
Yeah.
I'm a triple Taurus. We'll
Got some
preface
earth
that.
vibes. Got
I'm
some
a
earth
triple
vibes.
Taurus. If I get comfortable, I get comfortable. The second that I get comfortable, like it is hard for me to get out of those places. So for me, a lot of times, when we're talking about building the life of our dreams, we're talking about like really going after that. And I think that that's probably going to be like a heavy underlying theme for the first couple of episodes because we're both in that mind space and we're both like actively doing that in our lives right now. Once we get past the point of like, okay, I'm actually asking for the things that I want, and I'm actually opening my mind to the things that I want and understanding that my desires are actually in alignment with what God wants for me, and it actually is in alignment with what helps raise the vibration of the planet. Once we get in line with that, right? Now we're at the point of like, okay, what is the action that we take towards it? A lot of times people think that it has to be this huge leap of faith, like moving across the country, like we just talked about, right? And that is definitely a huge part of it, but sometimes it's the little things. It's the
Oh,
little daily actions is
very right.
really what it is, right?
Yeah.
And those big things end up happening, once in a blue moon, but it's the daily little shit that like
Yes.
adds up and compounds over time that like really helps move the needle forward. But for me, I think of Mel Robbins. Okay, do you know who Mel Robbins is?
Yeah.
Have you heard of her 5 4 3 2 1 situation?
I think so, and she's also does the high five, right? Is her the high five
Yeah,
tactic?
yeah.
Yeah,
I've never really connected with that one, but what I did
yeah.
connect with was I saw one of her TED Talks at one point where she was talking about having to get out of bed and she was like basically acting like a rocket and she was like, okay, I'm gonna get out of bed in 5 4 3 2 1.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's something that stuck with me for a couple of reasons, but mostly because, like I said, once I get comfortable, like I have to do some type of disruptive action to get me out of that mindset or
Yeah.
to get me out of that space. And most of the time, it has to do with moving my physical body, right? So
Uh-huh.
if I'm like in the trenches of building, right, I'm in the middle of working on this agency and I'm building this business and I'm focusing on all of these things and I'm at my laptop 10 times a day. If I'm looking at this bed
Oh,
and
I love
she,
that. That looks
woo,
comfortable. It's a comfortable bed. I remember.
comfortable. And there are times where I want to like I will work in bed, don't get me wrong, but then I will like do other things and then I'll fall off the
Mhm.
path, right? And then I hear that little voice in the back of my head that's like, you need to get up and move.
Yeah,
You need to get up and move. And then
yeah.
I hear that 5 4 3 2 1. And I literally just get up and take Onyx for a walk. Luckily I have a dog.
Love. Yeah.
And I'll get up and take Onyx for a walk, or I have to get up and do something. And sometimes that's what inspired action looks like for me is it's disruptive. And I
Yeah.
think that so many times when you hear the word inspired action, you think that it means that like you have to quit your job, move across the country and start a coffee shop. And that's not really the case, not all the time.
Right.
Sometimes taking inspired action is clocking into your 9 to 5 and getting that paycheck.
Right. Or posting something on social media
Or
or going
posting on
or
yes.
talking to someone at a coffee shop that you're nervous to do that, or flirting with
Oh
someone,
my goodness.
or
Yes.
like or working out one day, or just going a little bit harder in your workout, or eating a
Yes.
little bit healthier. Like literally inspired action can be so
So
small.
many different things.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
I want to hear from you. What are some of the ways that you take inspired action on a daily basis?
that's a good question. I mean, on a daily basis, inspired action. I think I there's kind of two parts to that, because there's some parts of my daily routine that are at this point like non-negotiables for me, but at
Mhm.
one point it was inspired action to start doing that. So it's kind of,
Mhm.
I don't, maybe it's still inspired action, but I feel like for me it's kind of, inspired action is like the start of something, and then
Yes.
continuing it, doing it every day is more of like kind of like a, you're locked in, it's a
Yeah,
routine.
it's a routine, it's a habit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean meditating every day, that was inspired action for me to even start meditating, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I remember
I was
that.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I think I need to start." I kinda heard some benefits, I was like, watched a little YouTube video when I was like, "Okay, you know what? Let me just try this, I'm gonna start meditating every day." It was really hard for me at first, and did it for 3 minutes per day, and, just started realizing had that it was really beneficial for me, and eh, started doing a little bit more, would do 5
Mhm.
minutes, and then 8 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and now I do like 10 or 15, but that even going up in time, that was inspired action, and I realized, like, doing that is something that does really, really help me, and so now
Mhm.
it's just like, "Okay, got it, I'm gonna do it, it's locked in, I know it helps me." But at one time it was very inspired action to start doing that. And then also another thing is my hawker walks. That is another
Yes.
non-negotiable for me at this point, but it was like an inspired action to start doing that, where I was just inspired to my hawker walks are it consist of looking at I usually do it on a treadmill, and I look at my hype me up note, which I'll probably do a whole episode on
A
that 'cause it's
whole
so important.
episode.
But I look
Yes.
at my kind of some things that make me really happy or make me proud of myself, or my affirmations or my vision board. It's kind of like a mixture of those things I'm looking at on the treadmill for however long. And that just really, I think, has helped me build my confidence. Plus, it's moving your body, which is great. And starting to do that was a very inspired action. And I'm trying to think of like recent. Oh, well, I guess yeah. Okay, so actually, yeah, this is a good example. Um,
Nice, nice. I like how we
um,
can see that thought process
yeah,
happen. Yeah.
literally can watch it live. Um, uh, Last week I was listening to a podcast, and I heard about taking cold showers and how they're very beneficial for you. And I have heard that before, and I refused to believe it. I was like, yeah, it's just not for me. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm doing other things that help me. That help me. I'm just not gonna do cold showers. I freaking hate the cold. Hate the cold showers. It's like I'm not gonna do that. It's gonna ruin my day. Like that's gonna ruin my day doing a cold shower. But on this podcast, they're really talking about the benefits of it. And it was very convincing. I was like, just do it. Just try it. Just do it for however long and blah, 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 blah. It's going to help you. So I was like, you know what? Fine. I guess I'm going to try this tomorrow. So I wake up the next day, and I think that ability to do it, that motivation to actually do
Mhm.
it, to try, that was inspired action, because normally I would not do it. Like I'd be like, nope, that's too hard. I'm not doing that. But part of me finally felt that push. So I think that kind of like that push to do it, and that possibility to do it. It's like you can do it. Like you can do it. It's kind of like an inspired action thought maybe that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I started doing it was a week ago. I started doing cold showers each morning, and I'm pissed because I do think that it does help you. I'm like literally so pissed. I'm like, damn it,
Shit.
you're right. I got into an argument with a friend because he started doing cold showers like a long time ago, and he was telling me about it. And I was like, that's bullshit, Noah. That
Well, I
does not
think people
work.
can say the same thing about meditating,
Yeah,
where they're like,
right.
"Oh, you're just." I remember when I was like 12 or 13 years old, I remember doing that and telling my mom, I'm gonna go meditate, and she'd be like, "Yeah," and she thought it was like code for like playing with myself or something. And I was like, "No, I'm gonna go meditate," and I'd end up falling asleep and taking.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
That is
So
so funny. Okay, I love that. No,
yeah.
that's really dope. I think when I think of too, for inspired action for me, and let me know if this is the same for you, but
Yeah.
one of the things that really hits for me is inspired action really helps me get over my perfectionism and my
Yeah.
self-sabotage. So for
Yes.
me, my self-sabotage shows up as perfectionism and procrastination.
Mhm.
And especially, kind of finding any excuse to like not do something, like I will do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like even the little like you were like, oh, actually, can we meet like at 3? And I was like, let's do 4. Like every once in a while, I like to do a little bit of that because
Yeah.
I push myself so much. But
But even
again,
that real quick, I
yeah,
was thinking about that because one, I was like, damn, I shouldn't ask to push this back. Like, I'm sure that's annoying. I should have kept it at the same time. But I was like, you know what? No, I want to push this back because I don't want to rush and I need to call my friend. I want to push this back. I'm just going to ask and see if that's fine.
yeah,
And you were like, actually, that would work. That would work well. And like, maybe let's push it back an hour. And I was like, wait,
yeah.
that actually works even better. So it's like just another example of like, ask for what
Yeah.
you want, and it might be even better for
Mhm.
all parties involved.
Oh my gosh, and we need to have a whole other podcast episode about what being truly honest and how that
Yeah.
gives you the best results, because like when you're really truly honest with yourself, like for you to be honest and say like this is what I want.
Yeah.
And then if I would have been like no bitch, like then you would have been like okay, you're not really the
Yeah.
best friend, and I'd
Oh.
been like, you know what I'm saying? But if I was like, you know what I'm saying? Like just we need to have a whole episode about being honest and,
Yeah.
like, really getting into that space.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing, but
Yeah.
taking it back to this, yeah, even being able to go push that back a little bit, I was, like, almost like, "Oh, am I procrastinating?" Because now I have to question it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, "No, actually, I need to take a nap." Like,
Yeah.
I definitely woke up super early this morning, and, I ended up going I did my makeup, and I ended up going out with one of my friends to, like, go help her go shopping. I was tired and had broken out in hives, so I had taken some allergy meds. Now I'm feeling so much better, obviously, and I
Right.
ate, and
A
so it was,
little
like, the
nappy.
perfect thing to happen, but,
Yeah.
um, a huge part of taking inspired action helped me heal that perfectionism and helps me on a daily basis, and I have a lot of ADHD tendencies as well, and I think that's a whole other thing, I have to get diagnosed, but it that goes into my perfectionism and my procrastination is that I will lose track of time so fast, like, time does
Yeah.
not move the same
Yeah.
in my brain as it does on a clock.
Yeah.
So for me, when it comes to taking inspired action, it doesn't allow me to think.
Yeah.
Like and sometimes it is so good for me because I will get into analysis paralysis, I will
Yeah.
procrastinate, and then I will just completely blow it off. And all of those things, every single time that happens, it's just self-sabotaging behavior. And at every single instance, it's like chipping away at like building my confidence. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I was really focusing on this year, because I've had to trust God every year at a different level and a whole new level of vulnerability in my relationship with God. And so inspired action is one of the ways that I communicate most with the Holy Spirit. So
Yeah.
it for me, the way that Jesus specifically and the Holy Spirit show up in my life is through inspired action. And that requires me to be able to quiet all the other voices, all of the other insecurities, all of the other learned behaviors, everything else, to hear that little whisper of a steady voice that's telling me you need to move now or you need to do this now.
Yeah.
And all of that combined together at the smallest things, even something as simple as, getting up at certain time and doing that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in my brain.
Yeah.
Every single one of those instances where I choose to take inspired action instead of choosing to procrastinate or choosing to do whatever the other self-sabotaging behavior is, every single one of those instances, it's like another brick that helps
Yeah.
build my confidence. And it slowly helps me to get into a place of trusting myself,
Yeah.
'cause that's what happens when you don't take inspired action, is you don't trust
Yeah.
yourself because 'cause you're not listening to yourself and you're not honoring yourself, right?
Right.
So it helps me trust myself again,
Yeah.
trust that when I take a leap, God's gonna catch me. The universe is
Yes.
there. I have
Yes.
angels, they're there, right?
Yes.
And that's a huge thing because then now I'm not seeing God as this big oppressive thing or seeing the universe as it's out to get me.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it as everything is in my favor, and it actually is. And when things don't work out, it's good. Like,
Yes.
and that's because when
Exactly.
that there's something even better to happen for me. And I just imagine, like, even in our situation, if I would have gotten the apartment and the job that I wanted, first of all, I wouldn't have a job right now, which I don't, but I that job that I moved out here for, that I moved out here so soon for, that job ended up laying people off in 2
Yeah.
months after that. In the holidays, ended up laying off all of their staff that was out here. All of the people that they had just hired, they laid them all off.
Yeah.
And then the apartment that I wanted was all the way in Addison. It would have been in bumfuck nowhere, and I
Yeah.
didn't have a car, so I wouldn't have any of the friends that I have now. I would have never
Yeah.
got to meet you. We definitely wouldn't be on this episode together.
Right.
And so, like, I just imagine sometimes if things worked out the way that I wanted it to work out, my life would probably be pretty shitty because I can't
Oh,
even.
that's we're gonna have to have a whole nother episode on that. But and I just want to touch like real quick on how we've been talking about what inspired action is, but just touching on how to get inspired action and like
Yes,
something
yeah.
you just mentioned, and I have like a couple things to say too, but you were just mentioning listening. Like listen to the voice, like listen to that voice that's telling you what to do. Like if you quiet your mind and start to trust yourself and listen to, if it's whether it's you, your subconscious mind, your higher self, your angels, your guides, God, Jesus, if you're listening, I think that's when you get a lot of inspired action.
Yeah.
And then I was going to say too, like for me, I I get inspired action a lot when I allow myself to dream big. If when I allow myself to want things and dream big and ask for what I want,
Mm,
that's when I get the inspired action. Like I have to dream big and ask for what I want. And then it's like, okay, whatever force is pushing me to be my best self pushes me and taking inspired action. So a big part of it for me is like actually asking for what I want and dreaming big. So those are listen and ask for what you actually want and dream big, and then inspired action just kind of like automatically follows in my experience. But yeah, we will have to have a whole another episode on redirection is
yeah.
protection. And I hate cliches, but they're always right,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
That's why we hate them.
I hate them because they're always right.
Yeah.
It's redirection is protection, blah, blah, blah. I was like, that's really annoying and
Yeah.
it's whatever, but it's so true. And I have like I think I have a really good way to kind of explain that. I have a few examples, so we can do a whole nother episode on that.
Yes. So the basis of this episode talking about inspired action is really, again, going along with the underlying theme of probably the next couple of episodes of just creating the life that you want to live and actually going forward and going after the dreams and the dream life that you want.
And
And a
not
huge part of that is, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's just saying and not worry about disappointment, but that's probably
Yes.
again a whole nother
A whole other
episode.
episode. And
Yeah.
look at here we are because now we have like 7 different episodes just
Yeah.
from this episode that we can
We're
go
just
off of.
teasing. We're teasing
Yeah.
it.
But that's why inspired action, it always starts here, right? Because inspired action is something that you take even when your mind doesn't fully believe. So there are so many times that I've taken inspired action or taken action on something and I didn't maybe even believe that it would be possible for myself. There are so many times where I've, submitted that job application or reached out to that influencer or did whatever it was that I wanted to do even if I didn't have the belief yet. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, some people are like, you got to believe, and you're changing your belief systems. But a huge part of changing your belief systems is actively looking for things that align with your belief system. Does that make sense? And so
That
for
makes
me,
yes.
yeah. So for
Yeah.
me, sometimes it's like if I have to change my belief system that I deserve more or that I can have more, especially with imposter syndrome and stuff like that, where I'm like that I can actually do this, it means that I have to take action towards it and start
Yeah.
aligning my life with that belief. Even before I truly believe it all the way. And
Yeah.
so that's why there are so many other episodes that can come after this, so many other tangents that we could go off of because it all starts with inspired action because it doesn't matter if you believe it or not yet. If you're taking action towards it, it helps. So it doesn't matter if I believe or not yet. You know what I'm
Great
saying?
point. Like
You
literally
know?
also you were asking for examples. I don't know why I forgot we were talking about this before we started recording. Literally, this podcast is inspired action
Oh my
because
gosh. Yes.
right now, yeah, it's like I mean, for me, maybe you've got over this fear already, Mercedes, but for me, part of me is like, oh, I'm kind of scared. Like, what if it doesn't do well? Or what if, it's hard to record or whatever. Like there's a lot of people that have podcasts. There's all these like little fears in my mind. But it's
Mhm.
like, okay, taking the inspired action is actually doing it, actually recording it, putting it out there, just going for it. And kind of getting over like doing things that scare you a little bit can be really inspired action.
Scare you a
Um,
lot of it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
scare you a lot of it. Scare you a lot of it. So do things that scare you is also another way.
Oh, huge
Yeah.
way. Huge
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that this is a great first episode. First of all, I'm so proud of you.
I'm so proud of you.
I'm so proud of you. Look at us
I'm
taking
proud of
inspired
us.
action,
I'm proud of
making
us.
it work, especially from, across the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
I
this was a vision that you talked about like 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago.
yeah. Well, and I mean, what's hilarious is that I have not me, but I have a picture of someone talking on a podcast on my vision board because I wanted to have a podcast eventually someday. So of course I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, it's coming to fruition. Cool. It's kind of scary. It's like, oh, it's coming. But it's part of the vision. So it's exciting. I really genuinely hope that this episode was useful or inspiring or just giving some value to people that are listening. I think that's both of our goals with this is just to inspire and to give value because we believe, like we genuinely believe in the things that we talk about so much. And we know that it's so beneficial. It's been so beneficial to us personally.
Yes.
It's the
Yes.
first time I've ever been excited about something, basically. I'm like, I could talk about this stuff all day long. So I'm very excited to have this platform and hoping that it helps other people. So yeah.
So we will see you on the next
See
episode.
you on the next episode.
Bye.